Christina, if you're ready, we can go ahead and get started.
I'm ready. I just washed my glasses off.
Now, Christy, don't feel like you need to have your camera on, only if you want to. I know once I'm done doing a few announcements, I'm going to shut mine off so we can focus on Christina and her presentation. But welcome, Christy. Really glad that you are here. We are a new group starting up just to kind of get all of those Google users across the state of Alaska, regardless of experience, to connect, collaborate with one another, and hopefully grow our community. Looks like Tana's joining us. Hey, Tana. Go ahead, Christina, if you want to switch to the next slide. And then for those who are interested in following along on the presentation, Christina just dropped that in the comments. So these are just some announcements of things that we do. First is for our Google group. The Google group is just a place where you will receive announcements about things that we're doing directly to your inbox. You can talk with other teachers across the state. Right now, we have a place where you can go introduce yourself, tell everybody what you do. So if you have something in common with someone, you can connect with them. We also share any questions or resources that we may have, or that you have, or that we may have, so we can kind of connect and get help directly as we need it. So this summer, we will be hosting professional development every Tuesday until August 4th. So until school starts up, then our model will change just a little bit. I've linked the sign up where you can sign up just like you did for this event. Or you could also recommend or post suggestions of the types of events you'd like to see in the future, because this group is really just to cater what all of the teachers, educators in the state of Alaska need. So we want to make sure it's relevant to that. The next event will be next Tuesday at 4 o'clock the same, and it's going to be Google tools to promote student choice and voice. So that's just looking at all the different Google tools and seeing how it could give your students a voice as well as choice in the classroom. And then if you're interested in presenting, we are always looking for presenters. We want to represent educators across the whole entire state, because we know that they are very capable people who could do really awesome things with Google. So if you would like to present, it isn't by no means inclusive or exclusive at all. Just email gegalaska@gmail.com and you can do that. And then hello, Andrew. Thanks for joining us. We just went over several announcements. And then Christina dropped the presentation link in the comments if you'd like to view that as well. And then Christina, you can go to the next slide. Okay. So now for the introduction. So again, my name is Chelsea Hurst. I am one of the GEG leaders for GEG Alaska. And then with us, we have Christina Hum, who is our presenter for today. She is actually my boss at YKSD. She is a teacher for AK Grad and also a STEM coordinator. She has been absolutely incredible to work with. Just her enthusiasm for everything is really inspiring. And she definitely hooked me. She is silly fun. She said she is silly fun. She totally is. And I'm reading that in the comments. So feel free to chat in the comments as we are going along. We definitely don't want this to just be one-sided. So anything you have to say, whether it's totally silly fun or something serious, just go for it. It's a way for us to connect. This doesn't have to be super formal. But anyways, Christina, while I have used Google a ton always, I've never really used Calendar a lot until I've met Christina, and it just transformed my workflow. So I'm excited for her to share some of her tips and resources with us. So Christina, go ahead.
So while I get the next slide going, if everyone could jump into the chat, and to get into the chat, you're looking over on the right side, and you'll see, you will see up in the top, there'll be a little bar with people in a 7 and then a little talk bubble. So if you press on that talk bubble, it'll open up that slide window and the chat will be there. Will you take just a second and say hello and tell us where you're, what school district you're in and what are you teaching? What's your position? Are you elementary, middle school, or high school? And if you're middle school, high school, do you have a content area? And while you guys do that, I'm going to go ahead and switch and pull up my next slide. So as you're posting, the other thing I'll just kind of let you know, Chelsea is recording our session today so we can share it out for folks who might not be able to attend because it's summer and there's conflicts sometimes. So just feel free, you can leave your microphone off, and we'll definitely leave your microphone off, and your video off, and or turned on, either is fine. As we're going. Cool. So I love already the variety. Wow, we're all over the map today. So we've got YKSD, Fairbanks, North Starborough School District, LKSD, and Alaska Gateway School District. That's fantastic. That's a great mix of folks. And then Laura out of Wrangell. That's a nice representation of Alaska. I love it. Today, like Chelsea mentioned, we're going to jump into Google Calendar. So that's maybe where I want to start, is to just talk a little bit about why Google Calendar? Like, what is the deal? And for folks who know me, like, I'm a little bit of a time management freak. I feel like I can squeeze the last little second out of my day if I just do everything just right. And Google Calendar plays sort of a role in that. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are you, if you already use Google Calendar, how are you using it? So you can share that in the chat also, or you could share why you came to this session. So what are you hoping you might learn about Google Calendar to bring back to your classroom or school district, or even, believe it or not, like family structure. We used to use it in our family to keep ourselves organized, but my son's all grown and gone, so it's not. I don't get a chance to use it as often personally. So as you're posting those, I just kind of shared one way. I definitely use Google Calendar across the board in my life, just in terms of keeping things organized. I like to be able to see things in one place, and that helps me a lot. I think that Chelsea's right. Like, the other big piece is being able to use a calendar that coworkers, colleagues can see or share. Like, sometimes we can work on adding events together, so we can work on projects or collaborations. Meetings, yes. So that was, I don't know if anybody saw, but the Google Calendar opened up that Google Meet on the side of Calendar and your Gmail. And so they're trying to really make it friendly to be able to add Google Meetings to your calendar events so that it's fast and easy, especially from things like email. So yeah, if you are used to using a paper calendar, this is going to be really interesting. I know that I transitioned a really long time ago, and I remember it was a little painful at first, but I think it's well worth it because I found that sometimes I didn't always have my paper calendar with me, and this now goes with me wherever I go. And the loss of that too is Chelsea is right, that cute planner. You kind of miss it because it's like sort of special, and it always carries a sticker or two. So I'm going to kind of come back to some of those things as we're going today. If there's something else that as we're going and you see it and you're like, oh, I really want to know how to do this or that, post it in the chat and I'll pick it up and add it in. I'm not going to do a whole lot of how-tos, probably more along the lines of features, but I will leave some time at the end for questions so that you can, if you really want to know specifically how to do something, I can get you on the right path so you can see how to do that. So this is kind of a list of this small interlude side step is to really just take a second to talk about time management. And one of my big pushes in AK Grad was to really help kids gain time management skills, especially learning online. And it's a big deal because they need to kind of learn, like, how do I manage my time so I'm getting the learning and the assignments and the tests done. So these literally are the skills that I would go about teaching a student. I might talk to them about making a task list. Like, so what are the tasks you have to do in a day, a week, a month, and then prioritizing that list, because most people who make lists typically put way too much on their list. And so you prioritize it, and you're taking your top 3, and then you put those top 3 typically on your calendar, because it's an active event. Like, you're going to be doing that thing at some point in that day. You're scheduling yourself to do that event. And then this idea of like, okay, well, the other skill that's really helpful is there needs to be some kind of a reminder or a deadline, timelines to help keep ourselves on that process of completing those list items. And then the last thing that most people forget, that's a kind of a big deal, is we get so focused on meeting those tasks in the list, we forget to build in time that are the breaks. We have to eat lunch, we have to eat breakfast. Those are important. So sometimes I'm not a super great lunch eater sometimes. So this last year I made a point of scheduling my lunch, which made a big deal. So I would recommend it. It made a big difference. And then the last thing I'll talk about for this time management skills is the whole point of management, like in that time piece, is that you're organizing your time so you're saving your time. And I'll show you a bunch of shortcuts today to kind of help with that, because I'm a big believer of like not doing repetitive things, rather being efficient with our time. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about time management. I'm going to try to help you, or try to not help you, but share with you like how I use Google Calendar to reach those time management skills, how I encourage kids to do that. And most adults as teachers, we kind of naturally do a lot of those, but I think you might start to see where Google Calendar really supports that quite a bit. So we'll hit on some of these goals today in the next hour or so. And then as we go, of course, I want you guys to jump in and share your recommendations with what you have, especially if you're like, oh, this would be great for kind of thing. I love crossing things off my task list. And so one of the things that's nice that we're going to see on Google Calendar and the part of the tasks piece is it does let you like check it and then it crosses it. So it's a lovely experience. And there's a nice calendar feature that I'll show you that does something kind of similar. So with that in mind, I'm just going to pause on this screen just for a second and take a look. This is my calendar for this week. You're not going to, it looks a little fuzzy to me to be able to like read the actual events in there. But what are some things that you notice about my Google Calendar? And you could just put those in the chat. What are some things that you notice? Yeah, I agree. There's a no work day. What? Christina has a no work day? That's crazy. There are lots of boxes. A lot of people see my calendar and they're like, wow, you're a really busy person. And that's an interesting like thought, like what is happening in my day? Are those all things that would be busy? Kind of an interesting thought. So yes, definitely color coded. Do you notice one column is like a lighter color than another column? Like Monday's boxes are a lighter color, lighter shade. And maybe you might notice that there's on Tuesday, it's a little hard to see on this picture, but at about 8 to 10 a.m., there's a unique symbol on that calendar event. It's a little grid, and that grid is not anyplace else. Definitely the colors are different. Some say busy. There's one other thing I want to point out. Do you notice that on Wednesday, June 10th, there is a event that's outside the times? It's sitting at the top. So that's kind of an interesting thought. And then the last thing you might notice is that the very top right, it says week, but it's a little drop down, so you could possibly change something there. So the first thing you might kind of wonder about then is, why is one column a lighter color? So when I mentioned earlier that crossing off those items on that task list, every time you've passed an event on your calendar, when this setting is set, it shows it as a lighter color. And that lets me know that that has occurred. And sometimes if I've missed something on my calendar, I'm like, oh, I need to shift that. I'll shift it. But that color coding is a really fast way to let me know those events are in the past. And completed. And if they weren't completed, then I need to shift them. Which brings me to the color coding. So any guesses as to why those the blocks, the events are different colors? What do you know about the calendar events being different colors? And you can, at this point, you're welcome to post them in the chat, or if you are feeling like you want to talk and unmute your mic, that's fine too. So yeah, Andrew, yeah, different calendars, yes. So I have actually those ones that are sort of that charcoal gray. That's a shared calendar. Somebody shared their calendar with me. And that lets me know that they have events scheduled in those blocks. And so if I wanted to have a meeting with them, I want to schedule around those meetings that they already have there. Those times are not available to me. Can you assign them different colors? I can. I can assign them the colors of the calendar they're associated with, which means, Christy, that I actually have several different calendars of my own in my whole Google Calendar. For example, that green event belongs to a calendar that's just for EdTech events. And that purple one actually belongs to Google Google Classroom. So your brain should be automatically going, oh my gosh, Google Calendar or Google Classroom will also post on my Google Calendar. That's fantastic. So now you're kind of getting this picture of, well, wait a minute. This does a lot more than just building in meetings. This can be a place where I block out time to do things like lunch. It could be a place where I have assigned a student's assignment and it lets me know that it's due on that particular day for that particular period. It's a place where I could schedule a meeting with a colleague and know, like, okay, that nowhere in that time frame are they available, but I could do this time frame and then send them a calendar invite. The last one I didn't talk about was this one that's sitting outside, the June 10th that's sitting outside the regular time sections. Any guesses as to why would you have an event outside of a time section? So it's not on a particular time, but it's sitting on a particular day. It could be a weekly event or a repetitive event. Any other ideas? Yeah, Chelsea, definitely like no time assigned to it could be another reason. It could be my reminder to myself that, hey, somewhere in this day, I need to remember to schedule getting those student progress reports out because that's when that needs to happen. But I need to kind of sit and wait and see how things shuffle out for the week before I can put it in a particular section. It could also be, this is a great one, like in our school district, we have what we call a travel calendar, and that travel calendar is shared with everybody in our administration. And the goal of that travel calendar is to basically just let people know when folks are in our different sites. And it doesn't have to be associated with a time, it's just more associated with a day, so that we don't overwhelm, have too many people in our communities at once. So that's another reason why those are sitting outside the time, but yet it's a great way to kind of keep track of, hey, there's stuff happening on this section of days, and we need to kind of be aware of it. So hopefully it kind of gives you like a snapshot of, what a calendar might look like. I'm going to go back really quickly, and I'm just going to make sure that I have, reminders. How many of you use reminders from your calendar? Anybody use reminders? Okay. So, Chelsea, how do you use your reminders? Tana, that's awesome. I love that you're using sticky notes. Yeah, for things like on your task list. Okay, good. So reminders. So let me tell you what Google Calendar naturally does with an event. So naturally, when you schedule an event, it automatically sets up a reminder. And one of the nice things about Google is when you're in Google Chrome, so part of the Google family of tools, whether you have your calendar open or not, and you're logged in to Google Chrome, it will automatically pop up a reminder for an event that's upcoming. So the way that I have mine set is to remind me 30 minutes prior to the event. That means wherever I'm at on my computer, a pop-up comes up that says, hey, you've got this event happening in 30 minutes. Now take a second and let's just think about that for a classroom teacher. You're in your classroom. I don't know about you, but a lot of times I have trouble with getting close to the end of the class period, and we're just wrapped up in what we're doing, and I'm forgetting to like get kids, finished sooner and get them, packed up. So what if a reminder popped up on my computer to be like, oh, 15 minutes till, it's time to pack up. Let's start to get our lab stuff put away, and let's get our last couple of questions discussed. So your reminders are becoming this really powerful tool. Now, if you use your phone in your classroom or wherever you're at as a teacher or administrator, you'll find that those also pop up in your phone with a little buzz. So that's another really, really nice tool, especially if you're thinking about tracking student behaviors. And this is an interesting idea because it opens up an opportunity for you to really sort of like, oh, I need a reminder to do this at this particular time or every 15 minutes. So there's a really wide range of possibilities with those reminders. So I'm just kind of planting that seed for that thought. Okay. So I just want to make sure I covered all those. Everything that you see right there is on the calendar. The only one I didn't talk about, and I'll share in just a second, is that grid. And that's really only available in if you're under a school district or business Google Suite. And it allows for you to schedule time slots for students or teachers or parents or anybody you want to sign up for a time to meet with you. So this is really powerful right now in terms of like the COVID-19 experience that we're having, because it means that you can set up like a time slot between 9 and 11 o'clock and say, hey, I need you students to sign up for a 20 minute block so I can meet with you. And kids will just go in and sign up for a time. And all you have to do is be there. You're just clicking a button, the kids clicking a button. So that feature is a wonderful feature. It is not available on a personal Gmail account. So just kind of keep in mind, sometimes those features belong to a school district or business. Any questions so far before I jump into other ways? My way is definitely not the only way. And I see one.
Come.
Go ahead.
Come, little lady.
Okay, so I'll jump in really quickly with Christy's question. Making the reminders chime or make a noise. Yes, you can. They do make a noise, and you can't change the sound though. That was the only thing that you can't do with it. Any other questions or thoughts before we move forward? And while you're thinking about that, I'm kind of curious. I have a question for you. I'm kind of curious. How many of you? How many of those were similar ways to how you use Google Calendar? Does anybody have something similar that they use with Google Calendar that I've shared so far? So Tana, I agree. I'm not really sure. Like I try to think often about what I would have done before I had my smartphone. And I find that I think when I come back to that, it really was like I really did have a notebook that I constantly carried around with me, but I had to actively choose to look at it. So if I was being my passive aggressive self and I decided I didn't want to look at it, I wouldn't necessarily get something done. So I do appreciate the buzz of the reminder. Keeps me honest. So I'm going to jump into how Google uses it, and it's fascinating. Like some of the ideas that they present for how other teachers around the world are using Google Calendar. It's really an interesting idea. So the biggest one that most people use is creating calendars for different job roles. Like if you're a coach or you have different classes. Or if you're like part of the time you're doing, let's say, running a club, you could have a calendar for each one of those things. And what makes it valuable is those calendars can get shared with different people or different groups of people for that matter. And that sharing can either just be viewing or it can be adding access, so they can add calendar events. So picture that for a second. That's like a fantastic way for kids to be responsible for adding calendar events to a calendar and learning those time management skills that the whole class is sharing that calendar. The big one, the other big one that a lot of people use it for is obviously like scheduling a meeting, a task or an event, and those are great for like being able to share with a parent or the community so they know what's happening. We talked a lot about those reminders with notifications. And then I just briefly talked about the time slots for meetings. That's kind of a newish feature. The web conferencing piece is nice, and I don't remember when that came on board, but now it's much easier to just go in and schedule an event and add your web conference piece, which is Google Meet, which is what we're using today. You can also add phone conferencing to it, and I'll talk about that, how I use that with my students for AK Grad. And then the other ones are the Google Classroom, that automatic calendar of assignments. It does it for you. So as soon as you have a Google Classroom set up, it automatically will add itself into your calendar list. And I'll show you an example. And then your Google Mail, I don't know how many people know this, but your Google Mail is also designed to add events straight from your email. So if an event pops up in your email, you can add it straight to the calendar. So that's a lovely integration piece. And it's one of those pieces I was kind of talking about, like taking those shortcuts. It's pretty useful piece. So I'm just going to show this screen just in terms of features, but then I'm going to open up my calendar and take just a second to kind of tour around and show you like physically how some of these things are done and where some of these features live. So inside, hey Lori, welcome. Inside of inside of Google Calendar, we have, so this is like an empty one, but what I want you to see is like over on the left side, you can see there's my calendars, and those are my calendars. And then below that is the other calendars. So any other calendar I subscribe to or I've added into my list is sitting on the left. And then in the center is all the events that we kind of talked about. And then you can see at the top, there's the week, where we'll go peek at that and talk about like why the different views. Over on the right, a lot of people don't realize that these exist, but there's a really thin bar next to Saturday the 13th. And you'll see like a little yellow sort of notepad, and then below that a blue circle with a pencil. That is Google Keep Notes, and then below that is your task list. So we'll poke at that too. This is that shortcut feature that a lot of people don't necessarily use or know about, but it's super useful. So I might put in there information that I'm starting to use a lot and I need to reference. Time zones, sometimes I have to go reference. So I might put those in there. My task list would be over on the in the right too. So I can quickly pop that open and add those events to my calendar. Or if they're on your task list with a calendar, with a data attached to it, it automatically goes onto your calendar. So feature-wise, like in a nutshell, these are all the things you could possibly click on in here. There's some hidden features that we're going to go jump into, but before we do that, I want you to see what it looks like from in terms of the appointment feature. So when you schedule a time slot calendar event, you send this calendar to your students or whoever you're asking to set up for a time slot, and then they'll get this, and then they'll see, oh, on Wednesday, June 10th, there's an event that I can click on to schedule for a time slot, and they'll just click it open and they get to choose a time. So just kind of remember that only belongs to a school district or business account. It won't belong to a personal one. Other features that we'll just poke at and we'll take a look at is how do you add the web conferencing tools, the color coding specifically within the calendars, because that's really useful, and purple is a fun color. Find time feature, I'll come back to, and then why we would make some events public or calendars public. And you can, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but you can embed calendars in just about anywhere. So if you're running like a Weebly site or a Google site, you can embed your calendar into that. So let's, any questions so far? I'm gonna switch over so we can actually poke at it. Is there any requests for anything specific that you wanna see how to do as I reach over or switch over? Okay, hopefully this is useful for folks. Sometimes it's just a lot of information, and it might take a little time to digest. Okay, so that's where I'm going to start then, is scheduling that meeting and sending invites to staff. So here I am. I am using the non-preferred browser just because I want to kind of keep some semblance of privacy for my school district calendar. So inside of here, if I wanted to schedule an event, let's say that tomorrow I'd like to have a meeting with Chelsea from 1 to 2. The first thing that's the really fast thing to do is I could just click on the area, draw out how long I want it to be. This pops up and I can put it a title. Now, this is like the quick, fast way to do it. But what I want to point out is, well, how do I add somebody to it? Right there in that really fast window is the place where I can add a guest. So I click on that and I type in my guest's email. And I could even add in a location if I wanted. So maybe we need to meet at the Raven correspondence office. So then she has the exact address of where we're meeting. I could also put in there a phone number. And so this is a lot of times what I do with my students when I meet them online is like a student might request a phone call, and I'll put the phone number on there that they're supposed to call. And then down here in the description, I might put in the objectives for the meeting or our meeting goals, like review the unit outline. And then I would save that, and Chelsea automatically gets a calendar invite. It goes straight to her email, and she can, from her email, accept it. So I'll go ahead and just save that for now. It's going to give me a notice that it's going to go to this guest. It's going to send that email to that guest. What I was trying to come out of my mouth was a lot of times if you're in your school district one, it's going to let you know that you're adding somebody outside of your school district. It's not a problem. You can still add them. It's just letting you know that you're adding somebody outside the school district. So there was another message that popped up really fast. Chelsea, while I'm talking, which is a lot of talking right now, will you go check your email and go ahead and accept that so we can see that you're in? But the other thing you might have noticed is like you could view when that person was available. And so by clicking that and popping it back open, it all of a sudden has a lot more options in there. So I now am able to come in here and see when Chelsea is available. I might have to switch my calendar so that I can show that. It'll be a little bit more clear. Inside of here, so just in case you didn't see, event details and find a time. Chelsea's always available. If you were to click find a time, anybody that's added to that calendar as a guest will have these little gray sections blocked out showing that that time is not available to schedule a meeting time. Now, this is huge because like for us, everywhere I've worked so far, scheduling a meeting of some kind is just crazy because you're trying to match times. You end up with like a million emails. To me, this is by far like the easiest, quickest way. I don't even have to ask somebody. I can just go in there, add them as a guest. And if they're also Google Calendar users, then I can quickly see, okay, they're just not available during those times and find a time when everybody can meet. When there's lots of people in here, there will be lots of sections grayed out. You'll just work around those sections to find the empty spot. Also noticed over on the right-hand side, there's these guest permissions. You have the ability to allow others to modify an event or invite others. So these are your security features that you need to pay attention to and choose actively to use them or not use them. It's the kind of thing that it can really cause a little bit of trouble when somebody else invites somebody to a meeting that maybe was not meant for that person. So that's the kind of thing that just being aware of and having. At the top, you might also notice there's an RSVP, a yes, no, and maybe. You can add a note to your guests if you would like in that feature. And then let's see. Those might be, yes, those would be the basics for like this screen here. Other thing I'll just kind of point out is notice that there is join with Google Meet. So I mentioned earlier, this is the place where you can add the web conferencing features. So as we continue on to our path through our COVID experience, this is a really useful tool because I can schedule an event with a colleague, a student, a parent, and all they have to do is click that button. Oops. All they have to do is click. Oh, it's already going to be in there. That button, that's kind of interesting for them to join. And Chelsea, I think you might have to jump in. I'm not sure what you found out between the difference between the personal account and the school district account.
Yeah, so you just have to be careful. We learned that the hard way with our first GEG session, but personal accounts usually cannot invite school accounts. So for GEG Alaska, it's actually my YKSD calendar invite under the GEG name, so you guys can log in, and that's also why we ask for your personal email as well, so everybody can get logged on.
Perfect. So just kind of being aware, if this is the case for you and you're kind of working between personal and school district, you can remove that conference, and then I will paste the link for the URL for the other Google Meet I need into that location place. You could also put it down in the description. It doesn't really matter. The last little thing in there is the notification piece, and this is where you can set your notifications or essentially the reminders. Like I said, I have mine set for 30 minutes. You can also set the email reminder if that helps. I prefer the little pop-up. I have enough email. So that helps me to give me those alerts. Questions on setting up an event and adding a colleague? Not see any questions, but I'll keep looking. So you might notice too that Chelsea now is I have a green check mark, which means she's accepted the event and I know she's attending. So just kind of refresh you, how to do this. It's really fast and easy. I just go to the calendar, I click in the time I want, and I'm clicking, holding, dragging, and it automatically creates that time event. I add in my title for the event, and I add in my guest by their email, and then I click save, and it's done. If that time doesn't work, and I'm going to just say, sorry, Chelsea, now, I would shift that time just by clicking and holding down, and a message will pop up to let me know, like, hey, this is going to change it for your guest. Do you want to let them know what's going on? So in here, you can send them a quick email and let them know, or we'll go to their email and let them know that you need to have a change in that event. So that feature is really powerful. Notice that I didn't use the create button here. This is the shortcut, right? I'm looking visually at the calendar, and I'm grabbing that time for something specific that I want to schedule for. I want to take just a second and talk about the different calendars, because this is the tool for changing your colors. So the magic of Google is that you're always looking for those 3 dots or a grid. So in this case, over on your left is my calendar. And then as soon as I hover over are the 3 dots. And when I click that, I get the display features for the events associated with that calendar. Also notice that there's settings and sharing. And if I click that open, it opens this window where all of a sudden I have a lot of features I can play with. This is the place where I might choose to share with the public or share with a person. And now you're kind of keeping in mind that any event associated with this calendar, if I share it wherever it's going, they'll be able to see the event. So you want to be careful. So if you have a calendar that's public and you're adding an event that belongs to a private calendar and it automatically or accidentally gets added to a public calendar, you'll be a little a little sad. So you just want to be careful that when you're adding an event, what that looks like for choosing the correct calendar. And actually, I think maybe I'll show that. So when I've chosen to select a section for an event, there will be, in this case, I might have to go to more options. And right here where it has that, where is my calendar choice? Oh, maybe I do not have another calendar because it's this one. So let me add a calendar really quickly. And while I'm doing that, does anybody else have, while I'm grabbing that calendar, questions? Okay. Boy, I'm spacing on adding. Let me talk about this because I'm not seeing the plus button for adding another calendar event. And so that's throwing me for a loop. Chelsea, you might have to jump in on that one. Remember, let me talk briefly about the other calendars. Why I'm not seeing, I'm wondering if this is, no, that doesn't make sense. Okay, I'll come back to it. Other calendars, if I come in here, this is where I would subscribe. Oh, they put it here, okay. This is where I subscribe to a calendar. This would be like if I wanted to add, say, like the running club's calendar to my event or to my calendar set. This is where I would add it in here. If you're in a school district one, you'll be able to search through school district calendars. And a lot of times they put them in there with different calendars that they share publicly. So that's how you add your larger calendars into yours to keep track of lots of events. And then you notice that the create new calendar, I don't know why I thought it was someplace else, but this is where you're going to add a new calendar here. And I'm going to call this, let's say, running club. And in here, I'm just going to quickly add that calendar so you can see, because I want to come back to, if you add an event, and now you're going to see this feature at the bottom where you can change it between calendars. So you're going to see there's the original Chris Hum. This is my new calendar. It's also different color coded. So that's the event that belongs to that running club calendar. So let me pause there. Yeah, and Chelsea, I agree. I would encourage your school to do, and a lot of schools do already, they have like a like a school-wide calendar, and all the staff can share that calendar, and they can add school-wide events that are happening in the school. This one is really useful because a lot of times what I've heard kids complain about is like, it's really hard when teachers assign projects all at the same time. And not that, it's a great feature to be able to work together and say, let's kind of at least stagger some of our projects so we don't overwhelm the students so much. But that's a nice feature there. So I have just a little bit of time left. I want to pause right there and see if you have any questions or anything else specific you want to see before I grab the last little piece here. Okay. So far, has everyone seen something new that they could use? Is there at least one new thing that you found that you can take back with you and use or share with somebody else?
This is Laura. My thing is that I'm trying to type a message. It's not working for some reason. But yes, I have. I don't put very much information in my meets ever. So that's just even a simple tip.
Yeah, I think that's hopefully I feel like when I'm putting agendas in descriptions, it gives, because that also goes to a person's email, so then they automatically have an agenda. And you can attach a document in there too. So if you have your agenda in, like, say, Google Doc, you can share a link or you attach the document, and that makes it just a little bit more seamless in terms of meetings. So yeah, feel free to share in the chat. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking in terms of how you might be able to use some of these features, or if you found something new that's useful. And I'll just share the last two things that are available. I don't use as much, but they are very useful. Over on the right-hand side, I mentioned there's that little strip. And these are those little app plugins that go with your calendar. One of them is your Google Keep Notes. Any other Google Keep Note users? I'm a huge Google Keep Note user. Anybody else use that? Grocery list. Okay, so one of the cool things about Google Keep is that it does, I've done this quite a bit as I share my notes with other people and we work on them together. So Google Keep is like a fancy note system that allows me to like grab quick information. And so I feel like that grocery list thing is like when we're working on a collaborative grocery list, that's perfect for it. Yeah, you can remember to use it. It really is. So the nice feature in Calendar is that your Google Keep pops up over on the right-hand side. And so it's the kind of thing that you can either grab information to add it to your Keep from your calendar. You can use it from Google Keep over to reference something happening in your calendar. I find it really helpful in that way. And then the other one is your tasks. So you might remember from the beginning when I talked about like this idea of time management. Well, this is it. And to me, like of all the really useful features, if we could teach kids this feature, I think they would like rule the world, because it's this idea of like, okay, what do I have to get done in a day? And I can add those tasks by clicking on that plus sign, submit essay. And once that's submitted, I could actually open up that and I could add a subtask. For example, I need to edit the last paragraph. Now, to me, this is awesome because right there's a place to add a date and time. And this to me is the key super useful piece. What if, and I showed you this at the beginning, what if a kid or a teacher or whoever, as we're learning our time management skills, we learn how to schedule time, allot specific sets of time to completing the tasks that we feel are the priority tasks for that day. So if your hot time to work is from 1 to 3, which I'm not sure who that is, but if that's you, you could schedule the 3 most important tasks you need to get done in that 1 to 3 slot time, which also means another colleague cannot schedule over that time. And that's huge. That time is yours. You own that time, and you get to use that time, and the reminders and the notifications will help you. So Tana's right. This is where I have used it with, my partner, with, friends and other family. And when we're scheduling travel, so-and-so is coming in on this day. And so we're really sort of organizing ourselves, and it's very, very efficient. That leaves me time to do other things that I want to do instead of like 500 emails trying to figure out who's doing what, when, and where. So to me, I feel like that feature of all the features is really, really useful and really, really powerful for what we can teach ourselves and teach our students, and communicating with our colleagues. So I'm going to stop right there and leave that last little bit of time for questions, and or I'd love to hear any other ideas you might now have for how you might be able to use Google Calendar for yourself.
I liked how you talked about that the colors change once it's in the past. Like, I didn't know that, but that's so cool. And now I need to go check my calendar to see if it does that.
Make sure you turn that setting on, and that's just the little gear that you would use up in the top next to the drop down for the week, which I didn't really talk about, but I think most folks might use that.
I put it in the comments, but I just thought it was worth sharing that I have my Google Calendar embedded into my website. And so then, and it matches the calendar on the wall, the paper calendar in my classroom. And then I print a paper copy for their binders in case they don't have the internet. But that's how I communicate with the parents, and it's always on my website. So I also can go back, like the kids could go back and look at something that we did, like when it was there in the past. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and Laura, I love that you said you print it, because to me, that's always been the reason I've chosen Google Calendar over other calendars, because it allows me to print the calendars in a variety of ways. And that's really useful, because sometimes some things need to come offline and I need to have them in print.
Yeah, and I've actually taken it in print, and then I teach the kids the students how to use a calendar, paper and pencil, because I think it's a huge jump to then have them use the calendar online. Like, what is a calendar? What do we write down? So they write down their sports practices, their violin practice, but then it connects with mine. So I do think it's really important. I don't schedule a ton on my own calendar because I get anxious if I miss stuff. So I have to have like my student stuff on one calendar. I have mystery Skype collaborations on another calendar. But if I have it overlapped, it's too much and I know I'll get overwhelmed. So I have them separate and kind of look at them separately. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Laura, is that we didn't really talk about it, but that there is definitely that the little click tabs that allow you to turn, I'm trying to grab this really quickly. They allow you to turn those features off. So just by choosing the little check marks, and this is what Laura's talking about, like you can build your stuff on your different calendars and then you can show or hide those pieces so that you're not definitely getting overwhelmed, but knowing that those events are still there. And so you don't overbook yourself, which I'm infamous for. Any other comments or questions?
I like how you mentioned like putting the Google Doc link and stuff into the meeting notes, because I feel like people will share Google Docs with me and maybe I don't do the best job like saving it to my drive right away. So then I feel like If it's on the calendar event, I know I can just go to that day and click it and get to it there rather than like going through my recent or my share with me and trying to find it, because sometimes that gets really overwhelming. So that's a good point.
I was going to say, I think it's a good point that you make about, can you hear me? Okay. I was going to say, I think it's a good point that you make about teaching kids how to do it, because I think oftentimes we think of tools like this as adults and how we use them, but we at our school had talked about it last year and didn't get totally done with it, but really talked a lot about kids need to know how to use a planner. They need to how to schedule their time, especially once they get to middle school and high school. And so I think I am still very much paper pencil, but I have to remember that some kids are not going to be. And just like I'm like on using a digital calendar, kids are going to be on using a paper planner. So I think we need to know both. I need to know how to use a digital calendar so that I can teach kids how to use the digital calendar, even if it's not something I'm necessarily going to use day in and day out. So I think calendar is one of the things we think about as an adult, but we need to remember our students as well.
I know when I taught middle school and we taught on a team, like with 4 teachers. And one of the biggest things, like our school loved student agendas. So when they walked in our class, we had to have something on the board for them to write in their agenda. But then a lot of times the parents felt like, oh, did they not write it down? Is it right? So if we as teachers like wrote on the board or on our slide like what they should be writing and then put it on our Google Calendar, parents can kind of cross-check and be like, okay, yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You did a great job writing this down. Or, hey, why did you forget to write, there's a test tomorrow, or this is your homework, but you wrote like you're doing a bell ringer about cats or something like that. So it can also help prioritize making sure they're getting the right information and learning how to stay organized too. So that's a good point, Tana.
Yeah, and I wrote down what Laura said about making sure you have it in 3 places, which we at our school we say you got to tell them 8,000 times or you can't hold them responsible for it, because you need to know that they've heard it enough times. But she has, like she said, on the website, on paper on the wall, and a copy for them. I thought that was a really good point, to make sure it's not just, well, I told you to write it down and so you should be accountable, because we have to remember they're still kids.
This is a true story. They are. I would say almost the same might go for adults sometimes as we're learning those skills too. I should say that for myself, because I'm often finding like, oh, there's a skill I was supposed to learn when I was younger. How did I miss that?
Yeah, I was going to say, especially during remote learning, like my son had speech therapy. He had his Google Meets. I had my own. My husband and I were scheduling our class times at the same time, and one had to go in the garage. I was just thinking maybe we should have made a calendar for that in hindsight, because it was like double booking stuff. We forgot stuff. So I feel like parents are in that same boat. So it's not just kids.
And hopefully, I mean, like as we go into next year, if we are still in this experience of practicing staying at home, people might find that a little bit more useful too, is like utilizing that tool. Chelsea, I'm going to pass it back over to you. Do you want me to pull up the last announcements slide, or do you want to? I'm going to make sure that we get everything you need before we finish up.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could reshare that. So as she's doing this, I am putting the presentation link back in the chat because there's some things that are hyperlinked. Just some announcements. Thank you guys for joining us today. If you haven't already signed up for our Google group, please do that. Google Groups is a place where we post tips that we have for each other. It's also a place to introduce yourself. So now that you've joined us here today, go ahead and go on that Google group and under member introductions, introduce yourself so you can get connected to the community. Or if you have questions, I post a lot because I want to get people engaged, but anybody is welcome to post. So if you have a question about something related to Google in general that you're stumped with, go ahead and post it and somebody in that community can help. And then the same goes as if you know the answer, go ahead and jump in and give that answer. We are just hoping through this group that we all become leaders. We all have our own Google knowledge, especially coming from different corners of the state. We analyze and interpret Google differently in ways that are beneficial to others. So we would love for you guys to share on there. And then just again, a reminder from the beginning, we'll be hosting professional development every Tuesday throughout the summer. I'll be hosting the next one about using Google tools for student voice and choice. And then if you're interested in presenting, maybe you have something, a niche in Google, that's something, a tip, whatever it may be that you're really passionate about, know a lot about, that teachers at your school may come to you for help a lot with, email ggalaska@gmail.com and we'll definitely get you on the list to present. And I think that it is it. Thank you for joining us again today. Christina, you did a great job. I'm now inspired to go clean up my calendar and make sure it's ready to go. If anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to stay on, turn your camera on, say hello, whatever you want. But if not, thank you. Hopefully we will see you next Tuesday. And if you enjoyed this, I challenge you to invite a coworker that you think would also enjoy this, either to our Google group or to our next session. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Christina, it's Lori.
Lori, I'm so glad you came. Hey, I just want to give you a heads up before you say too much. We have recorded this session. It's still kind of recording.